Will was asking about how you can put a pond within planting and then put planting around the edge to make it look more natural. When you guys have questions like that, I recommend that you look at photographs of what you are trying to accomplish, because you can learn a lot from how this looks like in real nature. So I've pulled up this image of like a pond slash marshy wetland area, and you can see how the planting kind of like goes in and out of the water along the edge. But I think that Will wants to place his kind of like in a more park-like setting. So I have also selected this grass texture here that has kind of a mixture of short and medium, more wilder looking grasses. And then I also found this one in my library of water lilies. I don't know, Will, if you were looking for water lilies or if you were just looking for lilies. But anyways, this is what I'm going to use. I'm going to try to mix these three textures together and see if I can get them to look natural. So first thing, I will just use the marquee again to select a big area of grass. And if you don't want to drag it, you can just Control C and then I'm going to make a new folder here called pond and Control V into your file. So again, I always like to start with textures that are in perspective already so that I don't have to do that part myself. Like, why would I want to bother trying to make grasses in the right orientation and perspective if I can just use a photo? So I'm gonna treat this like my background, and then I'm going to maybe I'll grab the pond texture next. And I don't need the whole pond texture, so I'm just gonna kind of grab a portion of it like this and Control C, Control V. And this is a lot bigger than I need it to be, so I'm going to resize it maybe like that. And I'm going to try to match it up like somewhat with the scale of the grasses that I'm working on. So if I know like these grasses look like they're about, 3 feet high, I'll try to match those up with, these grasses are a little bit shorter, so I'll try to match them up as best I can, but we want to make sure that like this image kind of makes sense for the scale of what we're seeing. So, okay, I'm going to try to somehow place it around like that. And first thing I'll do to get started is, I guess I accidentally erased my black and white filter, so I'll just put that back on. Okay, I don't really need to do much to this bottom layer, but I'm just gonna actually delete that layer mask. I'm actually just gonna copy this one by control clicking it, and then I am going to move it down a little bit. Just have to make sure I'm actually on that layer before I try to move it. So move the selection down a little bit, then go back to my layer mask up here and Shift Control I to invert the selection and then just delete it. So now that's all the same as the previous one. So I don't have to go through and do all of that brushing that I had done before. Okay, so I have that, and then now I'm going to take an approximate shape of my pond, and I'm just going to use my lasso tool. I'm going to take a shape like this, and then I will just click on the layer mask, and now I have my kind of pond shape. It looks like the perspectives are a little bit mismatched, so the first thing I'm going to do is Control T to transform, and then pressing Shift, I'm just going to drag this top part down a little bit and this bottom part up a little bit, just so I can make sure that I feel like we're looking in the same plane. Okay, so now I have the shape of my pond sitting in these grasses. And basically what we want to do now is use grass brushes to erase these edges and make it look like the other grasses are kind of growing over top of this edge. So I'm going to use my, my eraser tool, and I will right click to access my brushes, and I'm just going to use those same brushes that I used in the previous one. And I'm going to begin to erase the edge around the pond like this, so that you can see I'm on the layer mask here. Black is my background color, white is my foreground, and I'm using eraser and I'm just clicking around the edge. I'm going to use my left parentheses to make it a little bit smaller around this edge. And you can see already that now that we've blended in that front grass, it doesn't even look like there's an edge there. So what we need to do for the background is I think we're just going to create a new layer, and I'm going to call it shadows. I'm going to put it on multiply. And I think that if I look at this, this texture here, what I notice is that it's like the line is pretty clear around the edge of the planting, but there's like a shadow at the base of the plant where it touches the water. So I want to kind of enhance the shadow in that space between the highlight of the water and the shade of the plant. So I'll go back here, go into my shadow layer, press B for brush, go back to my little brush selection here. I'll decrease the size. And then I'm going to select, yeah, this is fine, just a gray color. And I'm going to begin brushing in to this shadow layer. And I'm using my parentheses to increase the size of the brush or decrease it if the need be. And then I'm going to right click and I'll just change the rotation of the brush a little bit to get around these edges here. So I'll increase the brush size. And now I think that looks a little bit more like grasses are growing along the edge. But I'll just turn down the opacity of this maybe to 65 or something just to see. And then we can go and irregularize the shape around the back edge of the pond if we want. So I'm on the layer mask. I'm going to use erase, and I'll just go in with a really small brush and just kind of like give it a little bit of definition around the edge. One, we can try to tie these water lilies in, so I can just make a selection using the lasso here, Control C, Control V, and I'll resize this using transform. I'm just going to rotate it a little bit so it kind of makes sense with my perspective. Thinking again about the scale of what we're seeing in this perspective, I probably don't want these water lilies to be enormous because I don't feel like we're that close to the thing. So I'm just going to put them kind of like in the middle here. And then I guess I will right click on this layer mask where we have outlined the edge of the pond with grasses, and I will give that layer mask to the water lily layer as well. So I've just shift clicked this, and now I'm going to press layer mask while I'm on the water lily layer, and it cuts away everything. So I don't need to redo all those brushes. And then I'll just press E for eraser, right click, and I'm going to select from my default brushes this big soft brush. So I'm making sure my hardness is 0. I'm going to increase the size here. And using my parentheses, I'm just kind of going to go in and blend that edge a little bit there. And then I'll go into the back here and blend that a little bit. And I don't mind that it's a darker color because I think if we turned this off, it wouldn't make any sense. And again, that's why I don't want you guys to think about color just yet, because as soon as you turn the color on and you turn your black and white filter off, like it looks very unrealistic, and I don't want you guys to get caught up on that. But if we leave it like this, it looks just fine. One more thing I'm going to do I'm just going to give this a try and see if this works. I'm going to see if I can do a gradient filter on this layer mask. So while I'm on the pond layer with the layer mask selected, I'm going to press G for gradient, and then I'm going to switch my background and foreground colors just by pressing X. And now I'm just going to do like a little gradient here. I don't like that, so I'm going to try it from here. Just to soften up the edge a little bit more. Okay. I think that looks fairly decent. So I'm going to just name my layers so that I can remember what they are later. And then I will, I'm going to select all of them and duplicate them by pressing Control J. And then I'm going to press Control E to merge them all. And then I'm going to use this as my like highlight or low light layer. So I can call this highlights. I can call this one shadows. And I could use my blend modes to go in and add highlights and shadows. So maybe I'll start with the shadows.